Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Fitri Zakiyah Destinata with the number 2020-051-0203. So I'm here, I will presenting about my paper with title Student Perception of Disaster Diplomacy as a Suggestion to Improve International Cooperation in International Relations. In this occasion, there are some chapters that I will discuss. There are introduction, theory framework, research method, findings and discussion, and the last is conclusion. Okay, we will go into the first topic, introduction. Disaster studies are one of the important topics in the development of international relations. In the field of international relations, disaster may be considered uh, as an unconventional security issue if disaster were previously considered as a god destiny or god of fate that cannot be controlled. Now they are recognized as a hazard, risk, and vulnerabilities that can be managed and mitigated. According to UNISDR report or United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Reduction, said that Indonesia is the country with the second highest number of natural disasters that can occur death in the Asia Pacific region with almost 2,100 people killed in the last 20 years. How did it happen? We can examine this from the geography of Indonesia itself. Natural disasters are unavoidable in Indonesia due to the country's location at the intersection of four major plates. They are a Eurasian plate, Australian plate, Pacific plate, and the Philippine plate, all of which have a significant impact on the severity of geological disaster. Also, the formation of extreme mountains that crosses Sumatra, Nusa Tenggara, Jawa, Sulawesi, and Maluku has consequences over the confluence of globe plates that are so actively moving. So from here, we can know why Indonesia natural disaster often occur. The following question. There are already several study journals that discuss about diplomacy. That from this following question. The following questions that I could give my research are first, what respondents know about diplomacy? Second, what is the role and impact of disaster diplomacy in international relations? And then the third is disaster diplomacy still relevant these days? Theory framework. Theoretical framework. Disaster diplomacy has an impact on all types of conflict, not just foreign politics or international relations. That is, the term of diplomacy is used in a broad way. Disasters include not just natural events such as floods and earthquakes, but also man-made events such as industrial explosion, drought, and worldwide peace. Disaster diplomacy examines the potential for peace and war as a result of policy. Another key aspect of disaster diplomacy is that it's not about how to make money for the government, whether it's the federal government or a local government. Diplomacy concerns how we may influence the situation. Empirical review. There are two sources that mention this research. There are Anita Sinulinga at 2016 World Journal, which is the first sources I used in this study. Anita describes what a disaster issue is in international relations and how it relates to humanitarian standards in her journal. Humanitarian assistance, as defined by the Geneva Convention, focus on efforts to alleviate human suffering as a result of crisis or disaster. This principle is the most important commitment humanitarian action, which is carried out by a variety of actors. The phrase disaster is a catch-all term for the various parties involved in its resolution. It takes the readiness of various parties in post-disaster countermeasures under these conditions. And also, I use a book written by Ilan Shelman. Is the study second references sources. Ilman Ilan Kelman in this book said that disaster diplomacy is the study of how and why disasters produce or do not create peace or conflict before, during, and after disaster. When it comes to the events that precede disaster, disaster diplomacy focuses on preventing, mitigating, and lowering losses, as well as dealing with the items that were in a place prior to the catastrophe. Instead, it concentrates on emergency response, recuperation, and reconstruction as far as what happens after the is concerned. Disaster diplomacy focuses on the circumstance in which disaster affects peace and conflict. Another aspect of disaster diplomacy is that if the results obtained are unsatisfactory, it is determined how the situation can be research method. In this research, I use qualitative methods uh, that with questions, what do you know about diplomacy? What is the role and impact of disaster in international relations? And in your opinion, did the tsunami that occurred in Aceh in 2004 affect the cooperation with Indonesia with other countries? And the last is this diplomacy still relevant these days? This research enlisted the participation of the students. They must meet the following criteria in order to participate in the study. First, a committed University Muhammadiyah of the Jakarta International student. And second is interest in a global issue. Due the current of COVID-19 epidemic, it is necessary to decrease the danger of disease transmission. So this interview will be conducted via a questionnaire sent via WhatsApp by me as a researcher. Later, the people who took part in the study will answer the outer questions and be gathered by the research findings and findings. First, disaster diplomacy is a diplomatic way with disaster as a tool. Our respondents agreed that disaster diplomacy is diplomatic strategy that employs disaster as a tool. If a country is afflicted by a natural disaster, other nation will assist it until it recovers. One of one of the respondents said that this disaster diplomacy was precipitated by a natural disaster. However, disaster diplomacy does not always occur due to natural disaster as such as tsunami, earthquake, and so on, but also there are unnatural disasters such as war or pandemic, like I said before. Participant three states disaster diplomacy. It is diplomacy with disaster as a tool to use diplomacy. We move to second one. The role and impact of disaster in international relations. Respondents think that disaster is a tool for bilateral cooperation between two countries and also strengthens a relation between the countries involved. When one country is hit by disaster, the other country will receive assistance, making for an easy recovery. On the other hand, a country that has a disaster affect country gets a good view from the other country. It looks powerful and it looks like that country that helping it cares about the other country, not being such a selfish country, though there was some concern in it. The real example is the tsunami that occurred in Aceh, Indonesia in 2004. Apart from helping Indonesia to recover and rebuild the country, the occurrence of this disaster can also help Indonesia increase cooperation with other countries for the assistance provided. Participant one said, in my opinion, that tsunami of 2004 affecting the cooperation between Indonesia and the countries, with Indonesia with another country. Even though there is a country that helped Indonesia with their concern, but still it affecting us. And the third, the relevance of disaster diplomacy these days. 75% of the respondents said that disaster diplomacy is relevant these days. However, another 25% said that disaster diplomacy was not very relevant depending on what the disaster was and which country was affected by the disaster. Participant 3 said, I think it is still relevant because as we can see today, there are so many disasters around the world, and the worst is pandemic of COVID-19. So this diplomacy is still used until today. Participant 1 said, I think the relevant or not, it depends with the disaster or the countries that had the disaster. But it's relevant if the country need help and the other country would help because it's still having a cooperation and diplomacy in it. Discussion. Um, according to this research, disaster has a negative influence on the disaster affected countries, but disaster can also strengthen international collaboration. Natural diplomacy, according to Andre G. Snyder, is definitely advantageous in international context because it allows countries to examine how other countries' regimes respond to natural disasters. Natural disaster diplomacy between countries aiming to boost soft power. Countries that pick soft power as their diplomatic strength place a greater emphasis on their capacity to collaborate in order to achieve their objectives. In the case of after 2004, Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami catalyzed prior diplomacy between the Indonesia government and the Gerakan Aceh Merdeka or GAM to end the conflict, which was aided by numerous international parties, notably the Aceh Monitoring Team or AMM, and the Finnish government. The dispute between GAM and Indonesia finally made substantial headway after the Helsinki Peace Deal in August 2005, when this negotiation when this negotiation took place after the earthquake and tsunami in Aceh in December 2004, when all parties, GAM and the Indonesian government, recognized that the priority of response and reconstruction in the aftermath of the earthquake and tsunami in Aceh is the top priority. A favorable environment for solving this conflict emerged. Furthermore, many GAM members and sympathizers died as a result of the tsunami disaster, and GAM's military might was weakened as a result of the Indonesian government military pressure in 2003. Furthermore, international mediators demonstrated unity by monitoring the two parties' resolve to continue citizenship. The digital diplomacy can still be depended on today according to the findings of the study. Furthermore, it is clear that Indonesia is a country that is extremely vulnerable to natural disasters. It is one technique to further build a connection between countries, especially when disaster diplomacy is in a conclusion. So, disaster diplomacy, which is one of the themes of study in international relations, was exhibited by University Muhammadiyah of the Jakarta International Relations students. They recognize that disasters aren't necessarily detrimental. Even a crisis can help countries strengthen their bonds. They are quite familiar with this diplomacy and how it affects international relations. Digital diplomacy, they say, is a diplomatic approach that uses prejudice or disaster as a tool. Other countries will aid a country that has been hit by natural disaster and to recover. This also demonstrated the disaster can be used as a mechanism for bilateral collaboration between countries, strengthening ties between them. When one country is affected by disaster, the other will help. On the other hand, a country that assists a disaster-affected country is viewed favorable by other countries. It appears powerful and cares about other countries rather than being selfish country. The 2004 Aceh tsunami improved Indonesian relations with other countries, including the United States, which sent relief in the form of food, medicines, and other necessities. However, it cannot be denied that the country that assisted in the aftermath of the Aceh tsunami in 2004 had concerns and intentions such as wanting to be seen as a more powerful, and that the assistance provided to like adapt to Indonesia, which has an impact on initial reliance on the country and the countries that assisted. Okay, so we already reached to the end. That's all from me. I apologize if there are any mistakes or wrong in my presentation today. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.